All
right. All right. Good to see
Oh, I
everybody.
just wanted
Okay.
to tell you one more thing. I'm enjoying lying. That's only
Oh,
a
you're
joke.
enjoying lying.
Only a joke. It's a joke.
There you go. I knew somebody was going to say that. That's great. All right, we're gonna go to a little different side of it tonight. And we're gonna deal with when a lie is perpetuated through non-action. A lie perpetuated through non-action. So let me give you a scenario. So someone, let's say, is traveling on a bus or driving in his car. Say someone is driving in his car, and he looks to the side of the road, and he sees that it appears that someone lost, let's call it a suitcase, a nice suitcase. He looks on the side of the road, and he sees a nice suitcase that is just standing there. Maybe it's fell down or something like that. So he's in his car. He can stop if he chooses to. The suitcase is something of value. Now, what is a Jewish person obligated to do in a case like that? I'll give you another case. Someone is walking down the block and he sees a child's toy that was left on the street. What does he have to do? Sees a child's toy left on the street. Let's say someone is walking down the block and he sees a diamond bracelet on the street or a very expensive watch. What's his obligation? What if he's walking in an area that's not necessarily Jewish, where most of the people are not Jewish? What is he expected to do in that case? Hi, Carol. Hi, Serene. So I want to develop this tonight from the perspective. How are you? I want to develop this tonight from the perspective of honesty and responsibility. So now that we promoted all the lying among us for the time being, we're going to go back to that and do a little more of that. Now I want to speak about the extended reach of honesty as it's identified in the laws of returning a lost item. So I want to read what?
You said if it was on the street, isn't that B'shut Harabim? So you're not.
Okay, very good. Very good, David. We're going to get to some of that. We're going to get to some of that.
I can tell you what I learned in, I forgot which came out of that. I forgot which one it was. Like, let's say you were at a counter with money, you were buying something.
Right.
With money on your side of the counter, not their side of the counter.
Right.
Always remember this. If it's on your side of the counter, it's yours. You don't have to say a word.
Okay. We're going to talk about why. Very good. We're going to talk about why. All right. Beautiful. Hi, Elaine. How are you? So let's talk about let's touch on the psukim. Lo tir'eh et shor achicha. We're in the book of Devarim, Parashat Ki Tetzeh, 22nd chapter, the first three psukim. Let's go through them quickly. You should not see the animal, the beast of your brother, etzio, any type of animal, large or small, nidachim, wandering, vit'alamta mehem, and you can't avoid them, you can't ignore them. Hashev tashivem na'achicha. Make sure if you see an animal of your neighbor, of your friend, you know whose animal it is. Not easy to pull that ox or pull that camel or that horse or that, whatever it is, sheep, to pull it off the road, take it in your hand and return it to your neighbor or to the fellow Jew. Now, if you don't know whose it is, you don't know who it belongs to, you don't know, and you can't identify whose it is, you have to bring that animal into your barn, into your house, and he has to be with you, that animal has to be with you until your friend claims it. Now, Somebody
Oh
has
my
to take
God.
care of this animal. Somebody has to feed it, right? Somebody has to care for it. Sounds like that's incumbent on this person. And if it's an oxen, and if it's it's a piece of his clothing. And this is what has to be done with anything that a friend, i.e., a Jew, would lose. Okay. And if you find it, you can't ignore it. You can't look the other way. One more pasuk. לא תראה את חמור אחיך או את שורו נופלים בדרך, והתעלמת מהם, הקם תקים עמו. A little bit of an extended thing. If you see that animal, that lost animal, about to injure itself, you also have an obligation to help it. Okay. So over here, the emphasis is on your brother. It's on your brother. So if you see the possession of your brother under threat, under risk, you have an obligation to do something about it. Good.
Oh, God.
Back in Parashat Mishpatim, yeah.
Oh, Ricky.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
It's
God,
gonna
Ricky.
get to be fun, Rochelle. Just wait. Ki tifta shor achicha o et chamoro. Excuse me. Shor oivecha. If you see the animal of your enemy
No.
wandering, lost, Hashem tishivenu lo, not my brother anymore, my enemy. And if you see the animal of your enemy, ki tireh chamor sonecha, the animal, the oxen of your enemy. I'm in now the 23rd perek of Mishpatim, Parashat Mishpatim, 23rd perek of Shemot, Pasuk Daled. If you see this animal suffering under its weight, you hate the guy. He's your enemy. You have to help the animal. Good. Okay.
You
Now,
have to help the animal, but you have to help him to return it to your enemy.
two cases. Beautiful. You have the case of the lost animal, and you have the case of the struggling animal. The first criteria is if it's someone you know, you have to do something. That's kind of obvious, right? You would think there's some level of social responsibility, of communal responsibility. The second pasuk, which actually comes before the latter pasukim, comes in Parashat Mishpatim, comes earlier, says the animal of your enemy has to be helped. So let's see what we got here. Let's put the core, let's put the framework on this, and then we'll start to work it. So first of all, when it said that you have to help the animal, v'lo hit'alamta, and you can't run away from it, what does that tell us? How many mitzvot are involved here? If you have the mitzvah to help, and then you have the negative prohibition of running away, so how many mitzvot do we have?
2.
Perfect, Michelle. We have 2. What do you have? You have a positive mitzvah. Welcome, whoever just joined. You have a positive mitzvah, and you have a negative, a lo ta'aseh, right? So I have the positive mitzvah to help, and I have the prohibitive, the negative mitzvah, not to avoid helping. Okay, now, why would the Torah, why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu go out of his way to give me a positive and a negative? Give me the positive, it's biblical, it's Doraita. I'm not going to look to ignore a biblical commandment. Give me the biblical commandment, a positive, a ta'aseh, mitzvah aseh, and let me go with that. Why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu frame it in, you have to do it, and make sure that you avoid not doing it? What would you say? So it goes like this. We have an interesting rule. It's a rule that you should own. That if I have an aseh and a lo ta'aseh, if I have a positive commandment and a negative commandment, it overrides one or the other. So let's say you have the positive commandment, to go back a couple of weeks, of respecting a parent. That's a positive commandment. That's a single positive commandment. On the other hand, I have the positive commandment of making sure that this guy's animal, that I do the best I can to care for this guy's animal or clothing or jewelry or whatever it might be. I have a positive commandment to do it, and I have a negative commandment not to run away from doing it. Therefore, if my father told me, ignore it, I can't listen to him because I have a positive commandment, one positive commandment of listening to my father, and I have a positive and a negative of not avoiding the return of an item. So a positive and a negative outweighs just a positive. You're happy about that, Rochelle? All right, I'm happy that you're happier this week than last week. So far, so good. Good so far. Whenever you have 2 and 1, you'll have generally a positive and a negative. It always outweighs the 1. Use that as a rule. Okay, it's a very important rule. Now, let's say you found something that belonged to a goy in a non-Jewish neighborhood. I saw Sarah cringe a little bit when I said your friend, your neighbor. I saw you cringe. I got it. Been a lot of years already that we're learning together. I saw it. It's good. So what's the story when you find something that belongs to a goy? Do you have an obligation? And if so, from where?
I think it's the same for both, no?
We do have an obligation, but from where, David? What is your blanket rule that obligates you to do the right thing in many, many cases, not all, but in many, many cases, to do the right thing by a non-Jew? What's the blanket rule that we have? The blanket rule is Mishum Darkei Shalom, because we don't want to create animosity between anybody. So whereas the primary responsibility here is to my neighbor and is to my Jewish brother, absolutely no question about it, we have a bigger responsibility to maintain civility, to maintain peace, to build good relations, to maintain a sense of responsibility one to the other. So.
But how are you assuming that belongs to anybody?
Okay, beautiful, Sarah. We'll get to that in an excellent question. 2 minutes, we're going to get to that. Hi, Cynthia.
Yeah.
Welcome. So, A. Hi, Serene. So, A. I have a positive and a negative. Very, very powerful. Overrides a single, particularly a positive. Drop down. The words are fabulously interesting here. In the first time it's mentioned, it mentions that I have to return the lost item of my enemy. And it's of my enemy. Good. Drop down. The second time it's mentioned, it seems to qualify it and brings it in to say, return the lost item of your friend. Okay. Extension. We know that when you put the two together, what's my big picture? My big picture here is I have to have particular sensitivity to my neighbor, but I also have to have sensitivity to the broader community. If I have to worry about my enemy, I have to worry about everybody. Okay, now, so far so good. Now, if you were walking down the street and you saw a wad of money on the floor, this goes back to David's example in a little different way, but we'll flesh them both out. You walk down the street, you walk down East 3rd Street, you see a wad of money on the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not in a wallet, it's in a paper bag, it's in nothing. You pick it up. Is that considered Avedah, a lost item? And do I have any responsibility to that item? And why or why not?
You just
So
walking
Sarah-
down, walking down the street and
I'm
it's
walking down the street, just like it describes in the Pasuk, and I see a wad of money on the floor. So the first law comes into effect here, which is we have to be reasonable and practical. If the money or whatever the lost item is has no distinguishable signs on it, then the assumption is
You could keep it.
that the owner of this item gave up on it as soon as he or she lost it. So, again, somebody loses, somebody leaves money on the counter, to David's example, right? Or drops money on the floor. Money doesn't have any specific identifiable element to it. So if someone picked up money from the floor, could be $1, it could be $1 million, they don't have a responsibility according to halacha to try to care for it and find the owner. They do not. Why?
Can I ask you a question? If
Mhm.
if they pick it up and now it's theirs and the owner comes along, do they have to give it to him?
So let's go. Good. Excellent. So let's go. So if the item had no distinguishing elements on it, my responsibility as the finder of it is 0, because the assumption is that when somebody loses something with no identifying signs on it, they're going to immediately give up their ownership. They're going to be mityaesh, right?
Ricky, isn't this
Right.
thing with Yeush?
Yeush, perfect, David. Excellent.
I learned that in Gemara about the whole
All
thing.
right, you're on. Give me the
I
other
can't remember
subjects
which
you learn,
one.
we'll cover them. Give me some of your other subjects, we'll hit those as well. So because of Yeush, because the person gives up on it, and this is a halachic consideration again.
Right, what's the word?
Yeush,
means giving
despair.
up.
Yud Aleph Vav Shin, Yeush, or despair. The person despairs from getting it back.
Right,
Once
right,
he
right.
despairs
Yes,
from
I
getting
know
it
the law.
back, good. His ownership of it, from a halachic point of view, is gone.
Right.
Person picks it up. Now, on the other hand, if the same amount of money was found in a wallet, where the wallet's characteristics were absolutely identifiable, then what? Can I keep the money?
No, because he's not giving up.
Beautiful. Excellent, David. There is no Yeush on something that has simanim. On something that has identifiable elements, there is no Yeush. There is no concept that the person gave up on it. Therefore, if someone picks up the same amount of money on the street in a wallet, because it's in the wallet, he has to take it home and take it back for safekeeping. Okay, now.
Wait,
what
can
does
I
he
ask you a
do?
question?
Sure.
Wait, the status of Yeush, it's put into play regardless, or the person who lost it has to mentally give up? Like, what if he doesn't give up on it? Like, he
Excellent.
believes
So,
he'll end up finding it.
Very good. We hold that if something has no
Signs.
physical signs, the person is assumed to have given up on it, and I don't have to think about it. So if it doesn't have physical signs, the assumption is he gave up on it. I don't have to know he gave up on it. And even to your point, even if he didn't give up on it, I don't have a responsibility, because conceptually, halachically, that's an item whose ownership was forsaken.
But not
And if afterwards, yeah.
No, go.
I was just going to say, if afterwards it was discovered whose it was, once
Doesn't
this
matter.
was already put in play,
You can
he
give
does
it.
not have to
Very
return
good. You can give it back from midat hasidut, a saintly act, an act that's greater than halacha. You would be achieving by giving it back. But according to halacha, you have no
Is that a
obligation to give it
Kiddush
back.
Hashem?
Let's go a little further. What if someone lost a Rolex watch or an expensive watch, right? Somebody lost an expensive watch. Now, there's a base, let's say a nice watch. Does it have any distinguishing characteristics on it?
No,
No. It
unless it
really
has their
doesn't.
initial.
Yeah, it could have
Of course it
diamonds
does.
on it. It could have
No.
the
That's the whole
letters,
thing about
numbers
that.
could be done.
If it's distinguishable, great. If it's distinguishable, then it's something else. But if it's a watch that you would see that this is the way the watch is made, and hundreds of people own it, if you want to take it in and hold it, and we're going to talk about what you do after that in a minute, it's lifnei mishrat adin. It's a beautiful thing to do. But from a pure sense of halacha, if this person knows there are hundreds or thousands of those watches on the street that people are wearing, and he can't say my watch was engraved or something like that, because he knows he can't say that, or he's going to ask and be told that he can't say that, then he's giving up. Okay? Okay, so far? Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Rick. How are you? Sorry.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
How are
You
you?
too. Okay.
So what do we have so far? So we have this cornerstone element of returning something that's lost. And by the way, how does it connect into our concept of honesty? There are a few things that demand honesty more than this, right? Because over here, I can look the other way and be dishonest, less than honest, right? I can take it home. Okay, let's go further and then we'll describe more. But as a cornerstone point in honesty, the laws of returning a lost item are right there. Now, let's say you got the item home, this wallet with the money in it. And now what do you have to do? Because you assume, because it's in a wallet and it has distinguishable signs on the wallet, right? Then the person, David, was mityaesh or no?
No, he didn't.
He didn't give up. Beautiful.
Yeah.
There's no yiush. He didn't forsake it. He didn't give up. Excellent. Now you have the wallet in your house. Now what? What do you have to do?
Try to post it and see if, I don't know.
Excellent. You have to post notices that you found this item.
Where are you doing that?
Excellent, Sarah. Excellent. It's an excellent question. So I'll tell you a story.
Wow,
Many years
Sarah,
ago,
what'd you say? Where?
we found a diamond bracelet in a party or something. I don't know if you remember.
Oh,
We
my
found the
daughter
diamond
lost, my
bracelet
daughter lost a diamond bracelet.
about
at a
30
wedding.
years ago. Yeah. All right. Could be. So we found it in a wedding or something. I don't know what.
At wedding, she lost it at a
Oh,
wedding.
it was at a wedding. There you go. They
Yes,
announced
she
it
was
at the
wedding.
time. Nothing happened. So at the time I went to Rabbi Prague, I
Rabbi.
asked him what to do with it. He said, okay, you have to post notices. Where do you post a notice? He said, oh, it was in the shul. So put signs up in the shul, bracelet found. Now, so what do you have to do when you find something? You have to put out information on it, right? You have to put out the word, but you have to be very careful in what you say.
Because anyone could claim it.
That's right, beautiful. In order for the person to halachically claim it, he or she has to give you simanim.
Mhm.
They have to give you signs that this is their item. So if you say brown wallet with black stitching found on East 3rd Street, game over. Then you went against the halacha because you probably inspired someone to come claim it. It may not have been theirs.
Mhm.
But the only thing you can say is wallet found, period, wallet found. Now, wallet found, the person calls you up and you say, okay, give me some of the distinguishing elements, the characteristics of this wallet. Okay, it was brown with black stitching and it had a gold clamp on it, whatever it might be. Okay, now you got it. But if the person goes out and gives out the signs, then he commits a biblical transgression of lifnei iver, of putting a stumbling block in front of a blind man, because he went ahead and he tempted someone to say that something was his when it wasn't. So I have to take the item in, put it in safe place, and then I have to let people know that this was found in a very innocuous way, in a very general way. Good? And the general criteria is that you have to allow this advertising to be out there for 12 months. If after 12 months it's not claimed, then you can do what you want with it. Now, let's say the item cost money to hold. What do you want me to do? I found the guy's ox. It's this big. right? It's gigantic. It eats. It has to be cared for, right? It costs me money. So now I have the biblical obligation to take care of this animal, but I'm being damaged by it.
Right.
So what do you want me to do? What would you say?
I would say it's not fair. It's not fair.
So
to
what do
a
you
person.
do?
Maybe it's going to cause a person to look away and not want to.
Excellent. It would. So what do you do? We said you can't look away. So what do you do? What would you say?
I don't know.
Give it to the rabbi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let him pay for it. All right.
No, let him figure it out halachically and every which way.
All right. So I'm going to tell you what we do. Tell me how you feel about this. So the halacha is I can't ignore it. I have to take care of it. If it's impossible for me to take care of it, I take a picture of it, modern day, I take a picture of it, I sell it, and I hold the money. So because it would have cost me X amount of money to take care of this animal for a year, and I wasn't in a position to do it or didn't want to do it, so I take a picture of the animal. So when the person comes with the signs, with the definable signs, I can look at my picture and say, oh, that's correct. It was this color and that color, and the hoof looked like that, or whatever it might be. But I don't have to damage myself monetarily in order to take care of his item. So I sell it and I give him the money.
Good
Okay,
idea.
so far?
Good idea.
Logical, good.
Yeah.
What if it's going to cost me money to pick it
Exactly.
up? What if it's going to cost me money to pick it up? What if I'm on my way to work and by stopping to pick this up, it's going to take a half hour of my time and my pay is going to be docked? Do I have to do it or not?
Yes.
Hey, Cynthia, what do you say?
Yeah, welcome. Yes, the answer is you have to do it.
Okay, interestingly, the answer is you actually don't have to take a hit. You don't have to take a hit financially, and
And
you
what do you
don't
do?
have to take a hit from the perspective of who you are. In other words, if an elderly person, a respected older person, sees the item on the street, he has a certain sense of self that comes first. And for him to go and start dragging this ox down the road is not appropriate for him. So ideally, he tells somebody else to get it. Or a Cohen on his way to the Bet HaMikdash to do his work.
Oh,
He has a certain station. So because he has that station, he doesn't have to be embarrassed or lessened to pick it up. He doesn't have to be. Now, can he be? Can he choose to do it? Of course he can. Does he have to do it? He doesn't have to do it.
Yeah, but once he does it, then he has to finish what he started.
That's true. That's right. Excellent. Very good. Once he does it, he has to finish what he started. So if he did do it, then he's got to hold on to it and he's got to care for it. He doesn't have to
Right.
do it, but if he did, he's got to follow it through.
Right.
Okay, good. Now, what if
Right.
someone finds something like a child's toy on the beach or a child's toy on the street? Now, let's say at the beach, let's say it's the Deal Casino, right? Where it's, whatever, where it's community people somewhat or something like that. Or
Lost and found.
on a local street. What would you say?
Lost and found. You go to,
Ah, beautiful, beautiful, excellent. Now you have a very interesting question. Are you allowed to give it to the lost and found, which will not deal with it from a halachic point of view?
uh-oh.
They'll deal with it from a general societal point of view. What do you say?
why not?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so if it's America, right? If it's America,
We feel
and
like they
you
will.
don't have an overarching halachic imperative because it's not our country, then you can give it to a lost and found, right? But if it's in your community, if it's in the state of Israel, if it's in your community, then you cannot give it to a lost and found. You have to deal with it. Because if it's in the community, limited sense, broader sense, but if it's in the Jewish community, or certainly in the land of Israel, where halacha has to take precedent, then you can't give it to the lost and found.
So what do you
You
do?
have to deal with it according to Jewish law.
But you would assume the
Wow.
lost and found in Israel will go according to halachic measures to get it
And
back.
you can, that's right. If the lost and found in
State of
Israel goes
Israel.
according to halachic measures, you can. If it doesn't, you can't.
Wait, Ricky, did you really find a diamond bracelet?
Yeah, it was just a very simple bracelet.
Oh,
We
'cause
held
my
on to it
daughter
for a
really
year.
She really lost the diamond
Yeah,
bracelet.
about 30 years ago or so, more or
Oh,
less
no,
30 years
no,
ago.
no.
This was a long time
No,
ago.
2 years ago, 3 years.
Oh, now it's not the same bracelet. But
Anyway.
anyway, did anybody advertise for it or anything like that or no?
No, we went searching for it. Nobody came up with it.
Oh,
Usually they come up with it on the iPhones. Anybody at a wedding, SY connection,
okay.
something.
So that's
No.
another question. So the question is, in today's day and age, can you put out the word on this via social media?
Uh-huh.
What
Now
would
you
you say?
Yes,
can.
and I'll tell you why.
Yeah,
Ricky, I once got a carton of toys, a tremendous carton of toys with a return address. And I knew that nobody in my family sent these toys. And there was a card inside to his daughter. This man sent it to his daughter and it landed in my house.
okay.
Now I go and I try and find this address. Not available. There is no such address. This is before we had social media. I call up the post office. There is no such address, madam. Even though it's return address, this man must be in jail. And he's sending it to his daughter. Stayed in my basement and I felt so bad for this poor child that doesn't know her father's thinking of her.
Ah,
And it stayed there for a year, maybe
Mhm.
more. And finally I said, this is ridiculous. I had to give it to the girl that works for me.
Right,
But
that's
wow, what a shame.
You did what you're supposed to
Today it
do.
bothers
It sounds
me.
like you did what you were supposed to do. You tried to get the word out. You held it for 12 months. After that, your responsibility ends.
Yeah, but you still feel badly.
Yeah, okay, good. That's good. That's what we're talking about here. That's good. Now, what if the item is like a child's toy on a beach or a child's or a doll on the sidewalk? What would you say about that? Think about it for a minute. Think about it. So the item is not something of great value, right? But it did belong to somebody.
It is.
It did belong to somebody. So what would you say? What would you say in this case? And I'm gonna hear your answers and then we're gonna just challenge it with a sort of an end around a little bit. But what would you do if you found a doll on the street, like a child's doll or, a little plastic toy from a kid or something like that? Do you have the obligation of hashavat abedah, of returning something based on the halachot that we talked about so far?
But I don't consider it avodah. I think that your nature would be to pick it up and feel badly that you don't know who it goes to and try and find somebody around that maybe knows who it goes to.
That's
In which
great.
case, you might have to leave it where, bring it back, put it there. Maybe someone will come back and get it.
Okay, good. Very good. We're going to talk about that question in a minute. Excellent. But according to halacha, do I have to pick up a doll or a little plastic toy from the street?
Maybe not.
Yes.
Maybe not.
Why not?
I feel like maybe if the child's like under, let's say, bar mitzvah age, like maybe just these laws don't apply to like people that are underage.
They'll come
Well,
back and get it.
No,
Well,
but-
the law may not apply. It's sort of there's some back and forth on this question, but it may not apply because when a parent sends a child into the street with a doll, right, or a little toy or something like that, there's an opinion that says that the halachic consideration is that the parent knows that kids lose their toys.
toys.
Right.
The parent knows that kids
Yes,
lose their toys, and
100%.
therefore The parent is already mityaesh.
Right,
They
okay, but
already gave up. And
Ricky,
therefore, you don't have to pick up the doll.
if
Now,
you,
again, if you pick up the doll, it's lifnei mishrat hadin, it's midas hasidut. It's a beautiful thing to do over and above what the law demands.
but
But,
Ricky,
mhm,
you
yeah,
can't go to a beach and pick up everything that's missing on a beach that people are missing. I mean,
That's
you
right.
need a suitcase.
That's right. You can't. So you have to consider a couple of things. A, we live in a time when everything is disposable. Everything. We never lived in a time like this where things have really so little value. Everything is disposable. In 50 years ago, certainly 100 years ago, things had much more value, right? Things
Yeah.
had much more value than they do today. So today, everything is cheap, everything is disposable. So now that turns some of these laws on their ear, because if something is disposable, right? Like a doll, for example, or an inexpensive toy, and there's so much of it, to your point, Sarah, there's so much of it out there. So now we have to think about it differently. We have to say that if the parent is sending the child out to play with something like this, that's so easy to replace and so inexpensive, not that we're judging anybody in terms of how much they spend or don't spend, but it's so relatively inexpensive, then the assumption is that they don't care if the child leaves the doll in the street, and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, but I mean, because you could lose a hat, you
Right,
could lose
good.
gloves, you
You could lose a glove, you could lose a hat, right?
Like,
Now,
you can't go around.
good. What if the item that you saw looks like it may have been put there and not dropped there?
David wants to know, what if you lose your mind?
Very good.
Good question.
What do you do
I've been
then?
thinking about
I will
this too
laugh
much.
for that one.
Really, it's a good question. Some people,
Sorry. Sorry.
what if something was, you're not sure if it was left on the street or if it was dropped on the street?
Oh.
What would you do in that case?
Yes.
You have to leave it. It's
Leave
not your obligation to pick it up.
Why, Cynthia? Why not?
Because if somebody left it, then they intended to leave it for a reason. And if they did dropped it, it's still not your obligation to pick it up.
I'm saying, if they dropped it, I'm not talking about the doll anymore. I'm talking about, a more substantial item. I'm not talking about the doll. So if it's a more substantial item, but it looks more like it's placed than dropped, what's my obligation then?
To leave it, to leave it.
Greater than dropped.
So it's a difficult question. It's a judgment
Can I
question.
interject a little bit, maybe?
Mhm. Yeah, sure.
Nowadays, because
Yeah.
of the state of the world, the way the world is, unfortunately, if I saw something and I was walking alone as a woman in the street in Manhattan, and it depends on the neighborhood and depends on who's around me, I don't know if I would let something distract me. Being a New Yorker, I would be more concerned
Right.
about being
Very good.
careful.
Very good.
Personally, that's the
very
way I
good.
am, though.
That's
You know,
very
I
good.
rode trains to school, and I used to switch 3 trains to get to school.
That's true.
So like, we're not walking in Israel.
Right, so you don't have to compromise your safety to pick it up, absolutely, you don't have to compromise your safety. And if your sense is that the item has been placed there and not dropped there, then you don't have to pick it up. But that's a judgment call. If it looks like it was placed there, meaning the person is coming back to get it, then you don't have to pick it up. Okay, now, what if the item, we're gonna do a few more questions and then just build the.
Wait, can I ask you one more question?
Mhm,
I
yeah.
used to pick up yarmulkes because I
Right.
used to feel like there's yarmulkes, it's Chilul Hashem. It started out, I would pick up at 1, 2. I was forever picking up yarmulkes. It was really a pain in the neck. Maybe there's lice in it, maybe it's dirty, maybe it's, I don't know. I don't want to pick up, it runs in the street, the cars are there, I'm running
Yeah.
after the yarmulke. It was at a point where it was silly after a while.
So you're over it? You're over it now?
I happen to be over it.
Good. No, it's a nice thing, but there's nothing inherently holy about it.
No, I just figured a
No.
yarmulke on the floor really looks bad. For
It
the,
looks
It took
bad.
me
It
a while
shouldn't
to
be
be able
there.
to throw them out.
It shouldn't be there, but you know,
I used to throw them out, of course, but.
No, that took me a lot to be able to throw them out. Like they were,
yeah,
you know,
it's
but
hard to
then,
throw
Yeah,
them.
right,
you know,
right.
they're ripped,
But
okay,
you-
they're
yeah,
not,
right.
That's hard to throw.
Used for a holy.
they're not halakhic.
Okay, Ricky, so what's the
whatever.
answer?
Okay, so if something was placed there, it's a judgment call, right? If something was placed there. Now,
If it's in New
If-
York, leave it.
if it's in New York, okay.
Could be a
Now,
bar.
what about making an announcement in the synagogue for something that is
As bad.
mukseh on Shabbat? Something that you
Ooh.
can't handle on Shabbat. So
Wait a
on the
minute,
one,
very,
on the one, huh?
very often, I'm walking to school, and there is something on the floor that is not, it's not allowed to be picked up. It's something that you can pick up, and somebody might have lost it. I would take it to the shul and have the rabbi ask, did anyone lose?
Excellent. It can be picked up. It can't be picked up. It can be picked up,
Can,
right?
yes,
Okay, very good. So if it can be picked up,
yeah.
we do bring it to the shul. We do. Why do we bring it to the shul? Because it's a biblical obligation to do this. So we're going to interrupt the prayers on Shabbat, and we're going to do it. What if it's something that I can't carry on Shabbat?
Then
So
you
it's
can't
mukseh.
pick it up.
I can't pick it up, true. But can I make the announcement in the shul
Yes.
about something that's mukseh on Shabbat?
I would think you could tell the rabbi that somebody might have lost something that I saw on the street.
Very good. So it doesn't matter that the status of the item conflicts with Shabbat. Doesn't matter that it conflicts with Shabbat. By the way, you wouldn't think this is a question, but this was actually a halachic question brought to one of the rabbis in Israel. Can you make an announcement in Shabbat, on Shabbat in the shul about an item you can't carry on Shabbat? Because
Right.
really, the real truth is you're not going to carry it, but you can reference it, you can talk about it. And the answer
Right.
is, of course you can. One other question, one other point here.
I don't know about that, Ricky.
What?
Why not?
Which
Because
one?
because let's say someone's phone is on, well, maybe they're a doctor. Okay, maybe they work for Hatzalah. Okay, never mind.
No, you're not picking up. You're not picking up the phone. You're just saying a phone was.
No, but
lost.
maybe they work for they're a doctor or Hatzalah or
No,
something.
no, good. I'm not saying the phone was lost on that day specifically,
maybe
just that a
they're
phone
not.
was lost. But Rochelle is raising a very important question. The question she's raising is, if I see the wallet of someone who's not Shomer Shabbat, right? I see the wallet of someone who's not Shomer Shabbat carrying the money on Shabbat, right?
Mm.
So now it gets a little bit
Yeah.
challenging, because if the person carries the money on Shabbat and I make the announcement on Shabbat that the money,
I'll be embarrassed.
it could be it could be embarrassing, it could be awkward. So in that case, you would obviously go on the side of not making the announcement and do it however you do it,
No,
after
you could always make an announcement and say something was found. If anyone lost anything,
Yeah.
please.
That's right.
No, but if it was left there,
Whose ball was it?
Yeah, if it was left there, then again, something that you can't handle on Shabbat, you can't touch anyway. Okay,
right, and you can't make an announcement because you don't want to embarrass somebody, and then someone else could come and take it.
say that again, I'm sorry.
You can't make an announcement because it's you embarrass somebody, but then somebody else could come by and take it.
No, but they can't tell you, you're assuming that you found the wallet of someone who was carrying it on Shabbat. You're not going to give him back the wallet on
Oh,
Shabbat.
no.
You have the wallet, you found the wallet.
Oh, so you picked it up.
Yeah, you picked it up
Oh.
on Saturday night, right? Right after Shabbat, a minute after Shabbat. The question is, do you have a responsibility to the person who was carrying the money on Shabbat?
Yes,
And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Great. I want to read you something from the Sefer HaChinuch, which lists all the mitzvot in the Torah and gives reasoning behind some of them. He says, what you said, you had a question?
No, I say, what if you're telling them they lost it, but they're gonna go back and get it on Shabbat, so.
No,
you
but
still-
the assumption is that you have it. You
Oh,
have
you
it.
picked it up even though it's Musaf?
No, you didn't pick it up. You picked it up some other time. You picked it up a minute after Shabbat, but you knew the guy was carrying it on Shabbat. Does the law change at all because he was carrying it on Shabbat?
Mhm,
Right? The answer is no. It
mhm,
doesn't change.
mhm.
Okay.
I'm not
Um,
around
He
it.
says the Sefer Chinuch says the following. He says that Hashavat Aveda, the returning of a lost item, Yesh bazeh to'elet hakol v'yeshuv hamedina.
They lost?
Yeah, it says it has a purpose for everyone, for the building of society in the state. Shashicha b'chol hi mitzuya. He says because everybody forgets, and that's not acceptable. Because forgetting or not making an effort in this case is considered a breach of honesty. The honest level here is that I have a responsibility to my brother, right, my fellow Jewish person. I also have a broader societal responsibility. So I have to be honest to keep that responsibility. In other words, we're talking about honesty and dishonesty. Returning an item that's been lost falls into the category of honesty and is therefore an underpinning in society. Because honesty means I can't manipulate or, talk myself out of something that's an obligation to me. In this case, our rabbis say that the reason the Torah was so emphatic on it and making it a biblical requirement, positive and negative, is because when people become lax based on their own reasoning,
Yes.
that's a breach of honesty. And if you remember what we started last week, honesty is a tool for shalom, right? To build society, to build peace. And what we said was that shalom, peace between people, we pushed it up, according to our rabbis, to be parallel to emet, to an absolute truth, not the relative truths that we work with in life, an absolute truth. So our rabbis say that a negation of a person's responsibility to another person, even in taking his ox and bringing it inside or picking up his wallet and caring for it, the understanding of that obligation is a great underpinning of society and a great underpinning of the responsibility of one Jew to another.
Are you saying you're responsible to pick it up? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
We talked about which cases we're responsible to pick it up. Yeah, we are. Overwhelmingly, we're responsible to pick it up. We said that if it's something of very limited value, if it's something that you think was placed there, if it's something that's going to cause you a problem to pick it up or beneath the person's dignity, he doesn't have to pick it up. But otherwise, I have an absolute obligation to pick it up. Now, if it's dangerous, if it's full of germs, okay, something else.
Yeah.
But in a typical case, I have the responsibility to pick it up. And the Sefer Chinuch says, don't take this responsibility lightly, because it's a drop down from building society, shalom and emet, and it's a core litmus test of truth.
So once you pick it up, you're responsible for the whole thing. Whether you have to feel responsible for how you're going to even get rid of it, and that's not yours.
That's right. That's correct. And that's why we said, if you can't take care of it, you take a picture of it, you sell it, and you continue to advertise it, and you give the money, the value of the item to the person when he claims it, if you can't take care of it. And we said that if it's costing you money to take care of it, you have to keep a record of that money and you deduct it from the overall value when the person comes and gets it. But you have the responsibility, and the responsibility falls under the category of emet and sheker, of truth and otherwise. Now, we'll wrap up with this. The Ben Ish Chai says something fascinating. He says the words of the pasuk say, "Lo tir'eh et shor achicha or et zion nidachim." Don't stand back and see the animals of your brother wandering and lost, and you ignore that, right? We said the positive, you have to do something. The negative commandment of ignoring them. And the pasuk continues, Hashev teshivem la'achicha. You must return them to your brother. So the Ben Ish Chai is a Kabbalist, and he takes this to mean the following. I'm going to read it in Hebrew. Kama v'chama chayav adam nizaher b'mitzvah zu. How absolutely rigorous a person has to be in this particular mitzvah. V'lo yifatenu hayetzer hara al chamdat hamamon v'al bitul hamitzvah zu. And he shouldn't let his evil inclination, a sense of laziness, a sense of not wanting to be bothered, take him away from keeping this mitzvah. Hen mi chamat atzlut, hen mi siba acheret. He shouldn't be driven away from the mitzvah from the perspective of not wanting to make the effort, the perspective of not wanting to get involved, or any other mitzvah, or any other excuse.
Ricky, sorry. But if you're saying that it's a negative commandment, to not look away, and there's a positive commandment to help, what's the difference? Meaning, if
the difference is that if you don't do it, you transgress both.
No, but meaning what qualifies, like once you.
If your father says don't do it.
So that it really is, it's really, they come together. So let's say somebody saw something of value on the street and didn't want to bother to cross the street to pick it up. He violates the positive commandment of going to get it and the negative commandment of turning his head away from it. So they come together. That's why it's so fascinating that the pasuk gives us a positive and a negative on one issue, right? It's a rare thing because your point
so
is
right.
You
can't just like, let's say he decides not to look away, so he's not violating the negative, but he just doesn't follow through with, like, returning it. Is that he didn't transgress the negative, but
once he didn't pick up, he automatically violates both.
I feel like.
So why mention both? If you're gonna go through with it, then you're not violating a negative mitzvah.
Right.
But Ricky, I like what you said before. If your father stands there and says, "Don't go pick it up."
Right, because the Torah is teaching us is emphasizing one of the rules, which is that if you have a positive commandment versus a positive and a negative, you have to be careful with the positive and negative. For example, if your father tells you don't pick it up, you have a positive commandment of kibud av. So you have a positive obligation to listen to him. On the other hand, you have a positive commandment to return the lost item, and you have a negative commandment not to turn away. So a positive and a negative outweighs the positive. You don't listen to your father and you go pick up the item.
That is most unusual.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm saying that's exactly the point. When you have an aseh and a lo ta'aseh, when you have a positive and a negative, everybody own this. When you have an aseh, mitzvat aseh, positive commandment, and a negative commandment, coupled together, they outweigh a single commandment. They outweigh a positive.
That's a big one.
That's why we learn it this way.
Does that hold true even if a friend says, "I lost something, could you help me find it"?
Beautiful, Sarah. Excellent. So this begs the whole question. This begs a gigantic question. And the question goes like this. If I have to worry about my friend's donkey, what about my friend? If the underpinning of society is the care for his possessions, what about the care for him? Right? We said last week that to care for another person, I got to do what I got to do, even if it means not being so honest. Okay, but leaving that aside for a minute, right? We talked about that last week.
Right.
When what the Torah is talking about from the perspective of the Sefer HaChinuch, and particularly from the perspective of the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai says, Hashev teshivem na'achicha. The Ben Ish Chai says that the cornerstone, and listen to this chidush. I thought it was shocking when I first saw it. He says the cornerstone of teshuvah is this. He says the Hakadosh Baruch Hu accepts our teshuvah, accepts our prayers for repentance because we do stuff like this.
Really?
An incredible hidush. He
Great.
says a person wants his prayers to be
And
heard, and in terms of growing and moving beyond something that he stumbled in, he should be extremely sensitive to this point, extremely sensitive to the needs of the other guy. So if I have to worry about his donkey, what about his financial health? What
Yeah.
about his emotional health?
It's a lot. It's a lot
It's a
about.
lot. Beautiful. It's a lot. But the words of the Sefer Chinuch and the Ben Ish Chai are very, very strong. And the Ben Ish Chai makes a point. He writes here for 2.5 pages, on how this and awareness to this kind of thing, to Ben Adam L'Chavero, between man and man, a sensitivity to man's needs.
But Ricky, wait a
One
minute,
second.
wait, this is
One second.
complicated.
One second.
Wait,
Cynthia.
wait.
Forces God's hand to accept my teshuvah.
Forgiveness.
That's what he
Ricky.
said.
Great.
Yeah.
Ricky, it's very complicated. If a
Mm-hmm.
parent tells you, don't pick it up, and you don't listen, and you don't do the
No,
kaveh,
wait a minute, wait a minute.
maybe
wait a
that
minute,
parent
Cynthia.
needs to feel that he's right, and it goes beyond what you're thinking. He needs to feel he's right. Therefore, his feelings are hurt.
Good. Okay. Got it. You're right. I'm just telling you what the halacha is.
Oh,
I'm telling you the
Right.
halacha is when I have a positive and negative versus a positive, and this is the exact example that our rabbis bring in this case. Your father tells you don't pick it up. The Torah tells you to pick it up. What are you supposed to do? The answer is pick it up.
God,
It's-
that's unbelievable.
It is.
It really
It
is.
is.
Torah overrides.
Yeah. A positive and a negative overrides a positive. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah,
ask you a
Rashawn.
question?
Overrides
If you narrow this down and boil this down, is your topic ethics?
No, my topic is honesty. That's my topic. And we're building from the same koteret, from the same headline.
Honesty in Judaism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honesty
Go
in
ahead.
Judaism. And the reason that I'm teaching it the way I'm teaching it is because I want everybody to understand that honesty, the way we use the term today and the way we think about it today, ain't what it's about.
No.
It's much broader.
Okay.
It's
Can I
much more
can I
subtle.
tell you something I thought of today that got me very, very, very upset? I think, unfortunately, 90% of the Jews don't know that they're Jewish.
correct.
And many, not all, many are highly intelligent people.
Mhm.
Correct.
Highly intelligent, advanced,
Right.
and civilized the life of today.
Yep.
Correct.
And I started thinking about that if they had known or had the opportunity, I'm going to start to cry. I was crying. Imagine that's how to Eli getting now. If they had the opportunity to learn any, you know what I'm saying? Like here, to me, you're talking about ethics. I don't care what you say. To me, you are speaking Jewish halakha, Jewish law, which is ethics, philosophy, theology, everything put together. If
Gemara.
these people had such capabilities, doctors, lawyers, professionals, that learn Torah and learn these ethics, like, wow, Hashem, it's like not fair that you let this happen.
So
That
that's
this
a very
many
big
people are
question.
lost.
Rochelle, you're raising a very big question. And really, the consideration of the question, as I understand it, is as follows. Whose responsibility is it to teach these people? Is it God's responsibility or ours?
Ours.
My perspective is it's our responsibility.
It's ours. I'll tell you, Ricky,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. In regard to what Rochelle is saying, and I'm living here in Boca Raton, Florida, very
Oh, yeah?
highly intelligent
Maybe
people.
I'm gonna come there.
Come visit me. I have to tell you that everything she just said is 100% true. They are Jewish, they're intelligent, they know nothing. I don't care what you tell me.
Nothing,
The
not
only
clue,
way,
zero.
the only way, Rochelle, we're going to teach, or anyone's going to teach, is the new generation yeshiva, because without Jewish education, they are going to be lost forever. The whole tribe of Judaism is going to be lost. Without
So
Jewish
what we all have
education.
to think about, and some of you have heard me say this before, we're going to wrap up in 3 minutes. We're the 1% of the 1%. I had no choice on where my neshama was placed. Neither did any of us. We had no choice. We could have been placed in a Jewish community in Queens or in Texas,
100%.
or wherever,
Okay.
where we didn't have the benefit of a 3,000-year-old community, not only a 3,000-year-old community, but maybe the most cherished of Jewish communities in the world, maybe. The Halabim are known all over the world, not for current day quality, but for a perpetual quality on what this community always
That's
was.
right.
I didn't choose to be placed here, but God was very kind, because he could have put me down the block, 10 blocks away, and not know anything about anything. So the question that we need to raise is, every gift brings with it responsibility. So the question is, what is my responsibility to this gift? If this gift, to Rochelle's point and your point, Cynthia, if this gift is that we happen to be the mi'ut of the mi'ut, the minority of the minority, then not only do we have Torah, do we have institutions, do we have community, do we have family? Okay, what did you do with your gift? So I think the question is a very serious question, I think, for each of us. And I think each of us has to be able to put together a plan where they're going to stand before God after 120 years and say, you know what? When 70% of America was walking away from Judaism, I did X. Now, nobody's going to save 70% of the people.
90.
But maybe we save one person, or we inspire two people. And we know that the responsibility starts closest to home, because we have people in our own community who are disenfranchised. So to your point, Rochelle, to your point, Cynthia, we have an absolute responsibility, and we have it because we're on the Torah class. We're on it. We have this incredible good fortune. I don't know what type of person I would be if I was born someplace else. I doubt very much I would have the love of Judaism, the love of God, of learning that I have. I'm so fortunate. I thank God every day for being part of this community, for having the teachers I had, and so on and so on and so on. Because it could have very, very easily gone the other way. We call that today, and you should know the term. Everyone should know the term. The term is tinok shenishpa. The term is tinok shenishpa. We look at people who have no background, and we call them, from a halachic point of view or a philosophical point of view, we call them babies who were captured when they were babies, taken away without the opportunity to be educated.
Oh, what's that?
And that's what we call them. We call them tinokot shenishpa'u, people who were taken captive and didn't have the opportunity to learn. So they're not judged in a negative way. They're judged in a more of a heartbreaking way. And we have a responsibility to do something. And I see my dear friend Esther just got on the phone, who was actually on the call, who's actually an outstanding example of someone who dedicated many years of her life, she probably still does, to teaching Torah to people that didn't have a background. So welcome,
Ricky,
Esther. Yeah.
Ricky, sometimes I feel my obligation here, and I know quite a few people that give philanthropy, they give to UJA, they think they're doing so good, and they give to Israel, but that's all they know. But they give UJA. Okay, so sometimes I feel my obligation, and I feel like I'm shoving it down their throat, to show them that we have yeshivot that need help, and maybe they could help them instead of just helping all these,
Right.
other societies, or maybe besides those societies, they're very wealthy people here. But I get frustrated because I don't know if they don't like the idea, and I still feel like it's my obligation to do it.
I'll tell you, you know what I would recommend, Cynthia? First of all, you can't give up. But you know what? People change through experience. Have couples for Friday night dinner. you and your husband share ideas of Torah. Tell them about what your children do. You know, you have
Yes.
children who are, like many of the people on this call, they're children as well, are people who are committed to chesed, are committed to community leadership. That came from you and your husband. It'll be forever with God's help. And I think the way people learn is by example, and they have to see happy, fulfilled people who are committed to Torah. And that's how people change. You know, when they get a sense that there's something out there that's beautiful and that's very fulfilling and enriching. And the best way to get it is through an experience, a good experience. So maybe, you know,
So far, I heard we're on the same page, but nothing happened.
okay, keep trying,
That's what I'm trying.
keep trying, keep
That's
trying.
as far as I got so far.
Okay. So to pull it all together, another element of honesty, of truth, is the element of responsibility when the cameras are not on, you know? And in this case, the camera's not on. Will anybody know if the person picked up that item or didn't pick it up? Absolutely not, or 99% not. The only one who knows is God. And God puts a big stake in the ground on this. And he says, you know, be rigorous here, be strong here, because it speaks hugely to the definition of the person when a person makes an effort, and to that rigorous sense of self-honesty
Right.
that a person has to have when it comes to issues between man and man. Now, we're not going to talk about this in this context, but think about what that means if someone has a more direct problem, what my responsibilities are. They're much greater, right? We're talking about something the person lost. It's separate from the person. So it speaks greatly to something more direct and something more absolute, you know. I want to make one other point on this. The element of honesty has a number of different areas of expression, this being one of them. And I want you to look at Hashavat Avedah, the returning of a lost item, as an item dealing with honesty and with the rigors of honesty. And we're going to touch on a few other areas like this to really build the whole spectrum of what honesty is from a Torah perspective. You know, there's an issue of a fascinating issue. We'll touch on it. You know, can I keep a faulty weight in my home? Let's say you have issues of weights and measures, right? A person has a store where he weighs things, right? He puts the flour on one side, the metal weight on the other. Remember the old ways of weighing things? So in his house, he has a faulty weight, never brought it to the store. What would you say? Can he keep the faulty weight at home or not?
Why would you need it?
What's it?
Door stopper.
Whatever, for whatever reason he has it, door stopper, right? Whatever reason he has it.
No,
Would you say you could keep it in the house? He never took it to the store.
Why would you even need? I think it's ridiculous.
But
Ridiculous to have it or ridiculous to ask the question?
Ridiculous to have it. Ridiculous to
Right.
have it, period.
Okay, it could be, but according to halakha, can I have it or not?
no.
No.
Like,
Why
is
not?
it an antique? What is it for?
Not an antique. It's just,
Because it
it's just a
symbolizes-
faulty weight.
It symbolizes a negative thing,
Yeah.
a negative.
Either you fix it or make it work good, or get rid of it.
Why?
Because it's faulty. It should not be there. It's not
It's
not
cheating.
legitimate. Somebody might use
It's
it.
it's a temptation. It's a
It's a
temptation.
temptation. I'm flirting with dishonesty. I'm flirting with dishonesty. And if I'm flirting with dishonesty, I'm already not in a great place.
That's
I'm not
right.
in a great place. So we talked last week about being outright dishonest. We said there's a chovah, there's an obligation of a person to lie when it comes to not hurting another person's feelings, when it comes to bringing people together, when it comes to downplaying his own strengths if he wants to do that. You know, we talked about that, and some of us struggled with that. And that's one side of the issue, right? Where the other side of the issue is in terms of the same deference to human beings and to connectionness and my responsibility to others, I can't even have a faulty weight in my house because that may play on me on some level where I won't be honest with weights and measures in even some small way. So today we don't measure things that way, but we have other things in our rubric, in our closets, in our minds that may take us off the beam. So the point of this mitzvah is very clear. There is that inner sense of a person, every person, that can often rationalize something, be on top of it, be ahead of it, and know that from a Kadosh Baruch Hu's perspective, according to the Ben Ish Chai, from a Kabbalistic perspective, this is the gateway to acceptance. When a person has this level of rigor and self-honesty and demands on self, that forces the doors of heaven open, and it has a very strong power to it.
Okay. So how does the Bet Din deal with honesty, like when they're trying a court case? Like, are there any times that honesty, like in American courts, obviously honesty is above all, but in Bet Din, is there ever a time when honesty is like pushed aside?
Excellent. Absolutely. There are
Yes.
times when
You want to spare someone's feelings.
circumstances always have to be considered. By the way,
Yes.
in an American court as well, in a secular court as well, there are circumstances that are considered this. If things were black and white, you really wouldn't need a court system.
Right.
The courts, the judges are there to adjudicate, to look at circumstances and decide which circumstances are reasonable to consider in terms of the person's actions and which not. So, a court could get two exactly the same cases, one from Reuven and one from Shimon, and Reuven will be guilty and Shimon will be innocent, because it's really all about all of the elements that surround it. Now, certain things are going to be black and white, obviously, but most things aren't. And that's why effectively we need the court system. And that's why it's interesting, to your point, there are the laws about how a person can come dressed to court, how the plaintiff can come dressed, how the defendant can come dressed. Can one of them stand and the other one sit? Can one enter before the other one? Because it's a judgment process and not a black and white process, all the things that impact a judge's ability to make judgment have to be considered. What if one person is very wealthy and one person is the opposite? How do you deal with that in a court of law, knowing that the judge is a human being and may be pushed to favor the rich one? Or maybe the judge is a human being and may therefore be pushed to favor the poor person, right?
But
all these things come into the consideration of this.
But maybe that's why you have a jury.
Good, okay,
Listen,
fine.
You get
the
different.
state, yeah, but the Supreme Court is not 100% either. I think that's why we say Hashem, God is the one that sees everything, because over here you can't believe what they
Right.
see and what they
Right,
say.
but we do have a court system, and the court system is not black and white.
That's right.
So that's why we have to guide the hand of the judges in order to give them the ability to judge. Because if it was black and white, it wouldn't be judged. Now, one last point on this, because it's a very important question. Why did Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, tell him that he can't be a judge and a teacher? Right? What did Yitro ask him? He tells him, what do you do all day? He goes, I judge the people and I teach. So Yitro tells him you can't be both. You got to choose one or the other. What does it tell him?
Wasn't he teaching him how to delegate?
He taught him how to delegate the judicial system, right?
When you're teaching someone, it's very black and white. It's a halacha, but when you're judging, it's then there's other things to consider.
You
So
can't
Okay,
you can't be a
when you're
hypocrite.
judging-
You can't be a hypocrite.
Right. So when you're judging, there's a lot to consider. But when you're teaching, you're never judging. You're never bottom line oriented. Ultimately, the judge has to get to a bottom line. So for Moshe Rabbeinu to be a judge, he can't be a teacher. It's a different skill set. It's a different direction. It's a different goal, right? So if Moshe Rabbeinu wants to be the judge, meaning ultimately he's going to say yay or nay, that's one thing. That's fine, Yitro tells him. But if you want to be a teacher, where you're never going to say yay or nay, you're only going to keep investing in people and helping them grow and helping them become more. You're never going to judge them. You can't be the same guy. Got to be one or the other. A teacher should never judge. Yeah.
But isn't a mentor both? Like a
So-
mentor?
So as a mentor,
Good
judge
point.
another person, or as a, what would you say?
Judging though, is a
I
mentor.
would say
judging?
he's teaching and judging. I feel like you
Exactly.
come to a mentor for a bottom line.
Yeah, so you come to a mentor for guidance, but not judgment, in my opinion. When somebody
Don't you-
judges, when you judge, you're no longer guiding, you know? To guide means I know where the person is, and in my own head, I have a sense of judgment of that person, but I'm not putting that on the table. What I'm putting on the table is a path for that person to grow to X.
Got it.
Isn't a mentor like a role model?
A
And-
mentor in
and
Judaism
like-
is a partner. A mentor in Judaism is a partner. And in Judaism, every friend should be a mentor. Every mentor should be a friend. You know, we call it Talmid Chaver. I consider, with really a great sense of appreciation, the people on this class, I consider friends and mentors because we learn from each other. And that's what every friendship should be. Every friendship should be a mentorship, every one. According to Torah, you don't want a friend who's not a mentor. You want somebody you're going to grow from.
It's very, very rare. You have to, it's hard to find. No,
Well,
no,
maybe in
really.
Boca it's hard to find.
Really. You're not gonna have a lot of mentors, I'll tell you that.
Well, try. Let's try that as
Cynthia.
many as we can.
Like that,
Wow.
Rochelle. Rochelle,
Wow, definitely
let's try
going
to
through
find
that
as many as we
problem
can.
I
now.
gotta meet you, Rochelle.
Yeah,
Wow,
let's try to
wow,
find.
wow.
Let's try to make our friends mentors. That's what we want to
Okay.
do. We want to.
That- we're
We
still
want to be
looking. Okay,
selective
that's good.
into associates and people we know. And what's the other word for someone who's less than a friend?
An
You know,
acquaintance.
acquaintance, that's the right one, not associate, acquaintance.
Good one.
Acquaintances are great. Everybody should have a zillion of those. It's always good. But a friend is someone who you let into your heart and really becomes a partner. And that's who our friends should be. And you don't get too many of those in life. And
Not too many.
that tells you that you're not going to get too many of those. But when you get one, you should work hard to keep that person.
Appreciate it.
Because
Ricky, you're my
that's-
friend. Numero
Thank you.
uno.
Amen. You too. You're mine. Great.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Are we going to
All
bed?
right, let's go. Time to go to sleep.
So Ricky,
All
I
right,
won't
thank
see
you,
for
everyone.
2 weeks I won't see you for.
All right, have a fabulous trip. Pray for us.
להתראות. להתראות.
Oh,
Have a
have a
great
good
day.
trip,
Very
Sarah.
nice. Good night. Enjoyed it.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
Ricky.
everybody.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Ricky.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.